Consumption of locally manufactured products have been handicapped by negative consumer perceptions and non-competitive pricing due to the high cost of manufacturing. I caught up with Phylis Wakiaga, the Chief Executive at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, on ways to tackle this. What is the climate of manufacturing in Kenya right now?
Currently, the climate of manufacturing is as you know it. Manufacturing has been at 11% of the GDP for the last almost 10 years, meaning there's still a lot of room for growth. In terms of formal growth in job employment, it's grown by about 7% annually. Issues of export are still a challenge because we're exporting about 15% of the GDP as compared to 40% of imports into the country. Right. Yeah, meaning there's a lot of room for improvement for manufacturing. And the Kenya Industrial Transformation Program was launched recently by the Ministry of Industrialization to try and deal with some of these gaps. It's tried to identify the industries where we are competitive as a country, where we have a natural competitive advantage, so that we try and increase the contribution of manufacturing to the GDP.
How realistic is the initiative to buy more Kenyan products as a move to improve the country's FX?
I think it's realistic because we do have a lot of manufacturing companies that produce locally. The challenge, however, has been the competitive business environment because we would have to compete with goods that are imported into the country, meaning that if we do not have a business environment that allows us to manufacture and sell those goods profitably, there would still be a challenge in terms of the uptake of the locally manufactured products. Right. We've also been concerned by the uptake of manufactured products by the government. There are initiatives, of course, to buy Kenya and build Kenya. Yes. However, a lot more still needs to be done. There's been some traction in issues like the standard gauge railway, but in the day-to-day procurement by government, there's still a lot of room for improvement.
Government seems to be shooting itself in the foot while promoting consumption of local products in an environment of high taxation. What's your take on this?
I think the first low-hanging fruit, of course, would be around taxation. When you listen to most of our members, because we receive issues from our members, most of the issues will be around facilitation by the revenue authorities, how we treat business, how we tax business. And a lot is being done in terms of coming up with proposals for the review of the common external tariff in East Africa, which is taking place next year, to try and ensure that we are taxing raw materials or intermediate products utilized in manufacturing correctly so that we are then able to become competitive. But entirely the tax administration space in Kenya needs to be improved. And we are currently trying to work closely with KRA to identify what some of those gaps are so that we address them. We've been discussing them over the years, but I think it's important that we take this opportunity to try and ensure that we facilitate trade and we facilitate industrialization through how we administer our tax in the country.
Let's talk about the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya initiative. Is there something to celebrate as yet?
The Buy Kenya, Build Kenya initiative, for me, what is there to celebrate is that we have the goodwill of the President, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. He made a pronouncement on the same during the May 1st celebrations that goods were supposed to be purchased from Kenyan companies, about 40% of the government procurement. What we require is the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya policy has been finalized by the Ministry of Industrialization and is currently before the Cabinet and the President for final approval. It would be important to have the policy approved. The Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Act or bill also needs to be finalized so that we can have the right policy framework for regulations like the Preference and Reservations Regulation, right, which then provide for preferences being given to locally manufactured goods. So if we manage to have those policy and legislative documents in place, it will be a step in the right direction.
There are policies in promoting government spend on local products, but how do we encourage locals to consume their own products?
For the rest of us, I think it's really an issue of culture change and awareness of what we have locally. I'll still go back to government procurement because, first of all, government is the biggest buyer. If government is buying a lot of goods locally, I think the message spreads within the country. So in addition to the policy and legislative documents I've mentioned, I think there would be need also to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the same, just to take stock of government entities that have actually been procuring from local manufacturers so that we see how far we are in terms of the 40%. But for consumers like me and you, I think the first thing is to be patriotic. We have a Kenya Bureau of Standards, which has standards that have been set up. These standards have been harmonized across East Africa, meaning that we do have standards. And for the manufacturers who are our members, they adhere to these standards. So the issue of quality, in my case, there could be improvements, yes, but sometimes I think that it tends to be one of those things where we look upon what we produce locally as citizens of Kenya.
While we grow the local market, there's always opportunity in the regional market. However, standing in the way of this is standardization of goods. What are the efforts to ensure that goods crossing borders are standardized?
It's gone quite far. I think over 1,500 products have been harmonized within the region, and it's an ongoing conversation. For next year, we're already working with the Kenya Bureau of Standards to prioritize the standards that we would like harmonized or reviewed within the region. So it's a conversation that is ongoing, but it has come a long way, and a lot of standards have been harmonized within the region.
There are obviously efforts for the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya initiative. What other methods or ways can be used to promote this?
I think there are efforts that we can take. First of all, we need to be aware of what is locally available. As the Association of Manufacturers, we have a database of the local manufacturers who are our members. We have an indicative list of what they produce locally, and this can be available not only to government agencies, but other companies that are procuring locally. And this is also going to be available. It's also on our website, but we'll have an interactive platform next year where we can even sort out the goods and be able to see what is available locally for consumption.